Most people who start a poultry farm pick chickens without even thinking twice. And most of those same people are quietly losing money they didn't even know they were leaving on the table. That's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. But today, you're going to find out exactly which bird, quail, or chicken is actually putting more cash in farmers' pockets in 2026. And the answer might completely flip everything you thought you knew about backyard farming and small farm profitability. If you've ever wondered whether your livestock setup is truly optimized for income, whether you're running the most profitable poultry operation you possibly can, you need to stay locked in for this entire video, because what you're about to hear is going to change how you think about your farm forever. And before we go any further, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Every week, we drop content that serious farmers and homesteaders can't afford to miss. Hit that subscribe button and the bell so you never fall behind while others are already profiting. Now let's get into it. Let's start where it all begins, your startup costs. Because before you ever sell a single egg or process a single bird, you've already spent money. And how much you spend at the start determines how quickly you start seeing real returns. With chickens, your initial investment is no joke. A day-old chick from a reputable hatchery costs you anywhere from $2 to $5 depending on the breed. If you're going with laying hens like S.A. Browns or Lohman Browns, the workhorses of the commercial egg world, you might pay a little more. But the real cost isn't the bird, it's the infrastructure. A proper chicken coop that can house 25 birds costs you anywhere from $300 to over $1,000 if you're building something solid. Add feeders, waterers, nesting boxes, bedding, fencing, and a heat lamp for chicks, and you're easily looking at $1,500 to $3,000 before you collect your first egg. And that's for a small backyard flock. If you're scaling to 100 birds or more for serious farm income, you're talking about a completely different financial commitment. Now here's where quail starts to turn heads. A day-old Coturnix quail chick. And Coturnix is the breed you want if you're serious about profitability. We'll talk more about why in a moment. Costs between $1 and $3. That's already cheaper than most chicken breeds. But the real shocker is the housing. Quail are small. A single 4x8 foot hutch or wire cage setup can comfortably house 50 to 75 quail. You can build a functional quail cage system for $200 to $500. That same money wouldn't even get you a half-decent chicken coop. And because quail don't roost the way chickens do, their housing needs are dramatically simpler and cheaper to build and maintain. Here's your first bonus fact that most people in the poultry farming space will never tell you. Coturnix quail reach sexual maturity at just 6 to 8 weeks old. Chickens take 5 to 6 months. That means with quail, your investment starts returning money almost 3 times faster than with chickens. In the time it takes your pullets to lay their first egg, you've already been selling quail eggs for months. That's a cash flow advantage that completely changes your farm business model and your break-even timeline. Now let's talk about the thing everyone obsesses over, egg production. Because eggs are still the backbone of most small farm income, and understanding the numbers here is absolutely critical. A high-producing laying hen like an S.A. Brown or a Highline Brown will give you roughly 280 to 310 eggs per year at peak production. That sounds impressive, and it is. But here's what the math actually looks like in real life. Your hen eats about a quarter pound of feed per day. Over a year, that's roughly 90 pounds of feed per bird. At current feed prices running between $40 and $60 per 50-pound bag depending on your region, you're spending between $72 and $108 per hen annually just on feed. Then you add bedding, veterinary care, the occasional medication, replacement costs as hens age out of production, because most commercial laying hens are at their best for only about 2 years. And suddenly those 300 eggs per year are costing you more than you might think to produce. Quail eggs, on the other hand, tell a very different financial story. A Coturnix quail hen lays between 200 and 300 eggs per year, which is actually comparable to a chicken, but here's the difference. She does it while eating only about a third of what a chicken eats. A quail consumes roughly an ounce of feed per day. That means her annual feed cost is a fraction of what you'd spend on a chicken. And because you can house 4 to 5 quail in the space one chicken occupies, you're producing significantly more eggs per square foot of farm space than you ever could with chickens. Now here's a bonus that most small farm business owners completely overlook. Quail eggs sell for premium prices. In farmers markets, specialty grocery stores, Asian markets, and high-end restaurants across the United States, a dozen quail eggs routinely sells for $4 to $6, sometimes even $8 in urban markets. Compare that to a dozen chicken eggs selling for $3 to $5 at a premium price point, and quail eggs are commanding equal or higher prices per dozen, despite being produced with far less feed, far less space, and far less infrastructure. That's what high-margin livestock farming actually looks like in 2026. But let's be fair here, because chickens have advantages that quail simply cannot match. And any honest conversation about farm profitability has to include both sides. If you're raising chickens for meat, whether you're doing broilers like Cornish cross or dual-purpose breeds, the meat market is massive, established, and incredibly accessible. A Cornish cross broiler reaches market weight of 5 to 7 pounds in just 6 to 8 weeks, which is remarkably fast for a meat bird. The infrastructure for processing chickens is everywhere. Local USDA-inspected processing facilities exist in almost every farming county. Your customer base already knows chicken, already buys chicken, and already trusts chicken. You're not educating a market, you're feeding an existing one. Quail meat, while absolutely delicious and considered a delicacy in fine dining circles, is a harder sell to average consumers. Your average person at a farmer's market might walk right past quail without knowing what to do with it. If you don't have access to restaurant accounts, specialty butcher shops, or a customer base willing to pay premium prices for specialty, poultry, your quail meat market is going to be limited. This is a real limitation. You need to factor into your farm business plan. Here's another honest advantage chickens hold: the learning curve. The information on raising chickens is everywhere. Your local feed store staff knows chickens inside and out. Your neighbors who farm probably know chickens. If something goes wrong with your flock, you'll find answers in minutes. Quail, especially in rural areas and communities where they're less common, can feel isolating when problems arise. You might struggle to find a vet who knows quail. You might struggle to find hatcheries in your region. This matters when you're building a reliable, sustainable livestock farming operation. But let's now talk about the section of this conversation where the numbers really start to diverge. And that's scale and return on investment in the context of small farm income and homesteading profit. Let's run a real comparison. Imagine you have a budget of $5,000 to invest in a poultry operation. With chickens, after coop, equipment, and initial flock of 50 laying hens, you might have $1,000 left over for feed and operating costs for the first few months. Those 50 hens won't start laying for about 5 months. Once they do, at peak production, you're collecting roughly 40 to 45 eggs per day. Selling at $4 a dozen, you're generating about $14 to $15 per day. That's roughly $420 to $450 per month in gross egg revenue. Subtract feed costs of about $150 per month for 50 hens, plus bedding, supplies, and miscellaneous costs, and your net is somewhere around $200 to $250 per month. Now let's run the same $5,000 through a quail operation. Your housing costs are dramatically lower. For $5,000, you could house 300 to 400 Coturnix quail in a well-designed cage system with money to spare for feed. Those quail start laying at 6 to 8 weeks. At peak production, with 300 hens laying at a 70 to 80% rate, you're collecting roughly 210 to 240 eggs per day. That's 17 to 20 dozen eggs per day. At $5 a dozen in a modest market, that's $85 to $100 per day in gross revenue, or roughly $2,500 to $3,000 per month. Your feed costs for 300 quail are a fraction of what you'd spend on chickens. You're looking at a potential net monthly income of $1,500 to $2,000 from that same $5,000 investment. That comparison alone should make you stop and think seriously about where your farm income strategy is actually headed. Here's your next bonus, and this one is genuinely rare. Coturnix quail can be bred in continuous cycles to maximize your flock size and production without constantly buying new chicks. A single quail rooster can fertilize the eggs of 3 to 5 hens. Quail eggs hatch in just 17 days, compared to 21 days for chicken eggs. That means you can build your own self-sustaining flock from a small starting number in under 2 months. Very few small farm operators are doing this intentionally and strategically, and those who are keeping their input costs remarkably low while maintaining consistent production. Now let's get into disease resistance and management, because one sick flock can wipe out months of profit and derail your entire farm income plan. Chickens are susceptible to a wide range of diseases. Newcastle disease, Marek's disease, avian influenza, infectious bronchitis, coccidiosis, the list is long, and managing it requires vaccination programs, biosecurity protocols, and sometimes expensive veterinary intervention. In large commercial settings, disease outbreaks have cost farmers hundreds of thousands of dollars in forced mandatory flock culls. On a small farm, even a modest outbreak can devastate your operation and your income. Quail have a notably stronger disease resistance profile. They're less susceptible to Marek's disease, which is one of the most feared poultry illnesses among chicken farmers. They're also less likely to contract many of the respiratory illnesses that spread quickly through chicken flocks. Their naturally high body temperature, slightly higher than chickens, creates an internal environment that's less hospitable to certain pathogens. This isn't to say quail are invincible, but their overall health management demands are significantly lower, which means lower vet bills, lower medication costs, and fewer catastrophic losses. For a small farm operation focused on profitability, this is a massive hidden advantage that almost nobody talks about. Bonus time again, and this one could add a serious revenue stream to your operation that most poultry farmers are completely ignoring. Quail manure is extraordinarily high in nitrogen compared to chicken manure. It's considered one of the hottest organic fertilizers available, meaning it delivers nutrients to soil incredibly efficiently. Market gardeners, organic vegetable farmers, and homesteaders who grow their own food will pay for quality composted quail manure. If you're already managing a quail operation, you have a byproduct that can generate additional income from people in your local farming and gardening community. Very few quail farmers monetize this. Those who do are adding hundreds of dollars per month in passive farm income from something they'd otherwise be throwing away. Now let's talk about the market landscape in 2026, because farming doesn't happen in a vacuum. The market conditions you operate in determine whether your farm business succeeds or struggles. Consumer demand for specialty and pasture-raised eggs has never been higher. People are increasingly skeptical of factory-farmed products and willing to pay significantly more for eggs they can trace to a local, small-scale farm. This trend is accelerating, not slowing down. Both quail eggs and premium chicken eggs benefit from this shift. But quail eggs carry an additional layer of novelty and exclusivity that commands premium pricing even in markets where quality chicken eggs are already available. The restaurant industry's relationship with quail has also expanded dramatically. Farm-to-table restaurants, which have grown enormously in popularity over the last decade, regularly feature quail eggs and quail meat on their menus as premium items. A single restaurant account can absorb dozens of quail per week and hundreds of eggs, providing you with a reliable, high-paying wholesale account that stabilizes your farm income in ways that farmers' market sales alone cannot. On the chicken side, the pasture-raised and heritage breed chicken market continues to grow. Heritage breeds like the Freedom Ranger, Delaware, or Buckeye command premium prices both as meat birds and as egg layers. If you're not raising commodity chickens and instead positioning your birds as premium pasture-raised livestock, your margins improve substantially. The commodity chicken market, the race to compete with supermarket prices, is a losing game for small farm operators. The premium, direct-to-consumer chicken market is a different business entirely. Here's a bonus that applies specifically to the 2026 market environment. Backyard farming content, homesteading, and small-scale livestock management have become among the highest RPM content categories on platforms like YouTube, and the corresponding real-world businesses feeding that interest are seeing record customer acquisition through community building and social media. If you're raising quail or premium chickens and you're not documenting it and building an audience around your farm, you are leaving a significant secondary income stream completely untouched. Farm education, farm tours, selling hatching eggs online, selling starter flocks, and selling farm produce through direct-to-consumer channels built on an engaged audience are all revenue streams that didn't exist at the scale they do today just 5 years ago. Now let's talk about the hybrid strategy. And this is where serious, small farm operators are quietly dominating their local markets right now. The most profitable poultry operations in 2026 aren't choosing between quail and chickens. They're running both in a complementary system that maximizes income across multiple revenue streams simultaneously. Here's what that looks like in practice. You run a modest flock of 25 to 50 laying hens for consistent, recognizable egg sales to customers who aren't ready to buy quail eggs. Those chicken eggs anchor your farmer's market presence and attract the broadest customer base. Alongside that, you run a quail operation of 200 to 400 birds that generates your premium egg income, your restaurant supply income, and your specialty product income. Your chicken operation covers your baseline costs. Your quail operation generates your actual profit margin. The infrastructure overlap is significant. You're already buying feed. Quail eat a similar high-protein diet to chickens, and many feed suppliers sell game bird feed alongside poultry feed. You're already managing birds, collecting eggs, and marketing your products. Adding quail to an existing chicken operation has a relatively low marginal cost and a potentially high marginal return. This is what integrated farm income strategy looks like, and it's what separates profitable small farms from struggling ones. One final bonus that you genuinely won't hear most farming channels talk about. Quail feathers have a market. Fly fishing enthusiasts, crafters, milliners, and costume designers pay for quality quail feathers. Coturnix quail. Feathers in particular have a distinctive, beautiful pattern that makes them desirable for decorative purposes. It's not a fortune, but it's another zero-waste revenue stream from an animal you're already raising. If you're processing quail for meat and discarding the feathers, you're throwing away money. So let's bring it all home and answer the question you came here for. Which bird actually makes more money in 2026? If you're working with limited space, limited capital, and you want the fastest possible return on your investment, quail wins. It's not even close. The feed efficiency, the faster maturity, the premium egg pricing, the lower housing costs, and the stronger disease resistance all point in the same direction. Quail is the smarter financial play for the small farm operator who wants to build a genuinely profitable livestock business without needing acres of land or tens of thousands of dollars in startup capital. If you have more space, an established customer base that's already buying chicken products, access to processing facilities, and a market that's ready to consume both eggs and meat in volume, chickens remain a powerful and reliable income source. A well-run, premium-positioned chicken operation is absolutely capable of generating serious farm income. The key word there is premium. If you're competing on price with grocery store chicken, you will lose. If you're competing on quality, story, and direct relationships with your customers, you can win. And if you want to build the most resilient, diversified, and profitable small-scale poultry operation possible, you run both. You position both at premium price points, and you let each bird do what it does best. The people who are genuinely winning in the farm and livestock space right now aren't the ones who picked the right single animal and hoped for the best. They're the ones who understood their market, understood their numbers, built systems that minimize input costs and maximize output value, and stayed consistent long enough to see real results. You now have information that most people running poultry operations have never sat down and seriously thought through. What you do with it is entirely up to you. If this video gave you value, if it shifted your thinking or gave you something real to work with, subscribe right now because you do not want to miss what's coming next. We're going deep into farm profitability topics that the mainstream farming channels are completely ignoring. Ring that bell, stay in the loop, and let's keep building something real together.